Welcome back to another episode of War in Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of how the Main Street and Hoover beef led to the death of Lady Delface and shoot 'em up. The Hoovers would be founded in the 1970s and become a part of the Crip Alliance. They became a well-respected and vicious gang on the west side of South Central and had several sets aligned to the Hoover name. The Hoovers would cover several areas throughout the west side of South Central, and initially, they had sets claiming Hoover from Fort Trey to 11 Deuce Hoover, and that would total to 10 Hoover sets. But with several issues with loss of terse and inner circle beef, that would go to being 8 Hoover sets, being 5 Deuce, 5-9, 7-4, 8 Trey, 9 Deuce, 9-4, 107, and 11 Deuce Hoover. The Hoovers' deadly reputation over the years would get them known for being a shiesty gang and a well-hated gang. There's many reasons why the Hoovers became such a hated gang. Many people would say because they killed Crip leader Raymond Washington, but the Hoovers would say this was a false rumor. But with the take on anybody attitude the Hoovers had, and the deadly line they pressed against other gangs, this for sure would lead to them having several rivals. The Hoovers would take on several gangs from the east side and west side of South Central, being fellow Crips like the 8-7 and 9-7 Gangsta Crips, the East Coast Crips, the Rolling 30 Crips, and all of the neighborhood Crips from the 40s to the 100s. They even beef with blood gangs like the Denver Lane Bloods. But with so much Crip on Crip beef, they would drop Crip from their name and become Hoover criminals. But the 5 Deuce Hoovers would remain Crips. Even with all the beef they had, the Hoovers still had a few allies, like the Great Street Crips, the A-Tray Gangsta Crips, the 5-1 Trouble Gangsta Crips, and the Insane Crips in Long Beach, and a few others, like the Main Street Crips, who were once close to the Hoovers, but by 2009, that will all change. The Hoovers and the Main Street Alliance would end on bad terms, from a party thrown by the Main Street Crips, which the Hoovers would go to. With them being allies, this was normal for them being together. But an altercation would happen at the party, allegedly over a female, and this would lead to a shootout. Shortly after this incident, on August 16th, 2009, a young Hoover member named Daquan would be shot and killed as he was walking. The killers would be from Main Street, and Daquan was only 13 years old. The killer would later receive life. This was followed by another shooting. 2 Main Street members would be killed, so this one's friendship between the gangs will be done, and in its current state, this beef has been going on for at least 15 years. The Main Streets are a well-known gang themselves from the east side of South Central, and have been around for decades, having cliques like the 8-4 and 9-8 Main Streets. The Main Streets in their history have been known for a money-making hood, but they also stand on business. They had several rivals as well, like Bloods like the Swans, and Crips like the 8-7 and 9-7 Gangsta Crips, as well as the East Coast Crips, among many others. The Hoovers and the Main Street beef will all lead to an incident I'ma detail. Avion Bolden, also known as Shoot 'em Up from 7-4 Hoover, and his girlfriend Jacinta Walker, also known as Lady Delface from 5-1 Trouble Gangsta Crip, were a couple and both heavily involved in the streets in their communities. On June 13th, 2014, Avion, Jacinta, and another couple, Anthony, and an unidentified female driver. They were going to the movies to see 22 Jump Street. The couples were parked in a silver Toyota Camry on Fig and 87th Street. They were about to head out to the movies when a red Nissan Altima pulled up, and the passenger of that car started shooting at them. Anthony, who was allegedly in the front passenger seat of the Toyota, returned fire and fatally struck the gunman in the Nissan. A person inside the Nissan fired about 10 shots, striking Jacinta and Avion. Jacinta and Avion were pronounced dead at the scene. After the shots were fired, the Nissan's driver took the gravely wounded passenger, identified by the coroner's office as 33-year-old Trevor Williams, to a fire station on Main Street and 108th Street. Trevor was from Main Street, and he would later die from being shot. Anthony was also shot, suffering a gunshot wound to the shoulder, but was treated at a hospital and released prior to be taken into custody. Anthony was arrested on suspicion of murder, but was released on June 17th, after prosecutors declined to file charges because the investigation found that Anthony had acted in self-defense. This incident left 3 people dead and both sides losing members. Just 1 year later, July 25th, 2015, Anthony's dad, Anthony Sr., was shot and killed at an intersection of South Hoover and West 88th Street. Anthony Sr. was sitting in his car around 4 p.m. He was at a stop sign when a gunman in another car stopped alongside of his car, got out, and opened fire on Anthony. Anthony Sr. tried to drive away, but his car collided with a light pole. He was pronounced dead at the scene at 4:15 p.m. This was all in the time period of 100 Days, 100 Nights that had LA turning up, with multiple gangs throughout LA going to war. 5 years later, Anthony would die himself on September 6, 2020. He died in Hoover's territory. Anthony was involved in a situation where he lost Lady Daleface and shoot him up, and he returned fire, killing their shooter. And just a year later after that, lost his own father. And just 5 years later, he would die himself. This was just a tale of the streets that shows you how one bad incident could cause bloodshed for several years between several people. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.